Good afternoon and welcome to the Saturday Sports Special. And I greet you that it is a special program today. Well, it's the first day of the month of May, and it's our first program for the month of May. And as we attempt to do every month, as we have said, is that we try to have an open discussion. And today is no different because we are opening our lines so that you, the viewers, and you who have participated over the past year or so, can be part of the program. We want to hear what you have to say. You have been listening to a lot of the sportsmen, the sportswomen, the administrators, and all that has been happening. And I'm certain there are those who have something they want to add. So this is your opportunity. And so for the next 2 hours, we'll be discussing with folks, what they think about, certain things, what they have on their mind, regarding sports development. And in particular, we will try to zoom in on what it is you think can be done in terms of strategies, in terms of plans, in rebuilding the sports sector in the Caribbean post-pandemic. It will be very important, as we have heard. Vernon Springer had said, and he has been on our program a couple of times, that when it comes to a budget and budgeting, sports will be on the chopping blocks. There's no if and but about that. Health, education, security, infrastructure, and you go on, will obviously be top priority for governments. Sports will have to, in many instances, take a back seat for a while. So it will require, some deep thinking, innovative, and sometimes, very compromising situations. But we'll have a lot to talk about. We have standing by in Toronto, Canada, Rudian Sylvan. And in St. George's, Grenada, there's also Jason Skeet, who will be joining us as well. And we'll be hearing from those folks, as well as others who will be joining us and putting up their views. But interesting enough, there were a number of issues that were raised when Atto Bolden, who was on our program on Thursday last, and we will also be bringing little snippets of it and hearing your reaction based on what Atto Bolden, the broadcaster, that track and field broadcaster and analyst, had to say. So quite a lot to talk about. But first of all, let me see if I can hear from Rudian what he has to say regarding anything he probably wants to say. First of all, good afternoon to you, Rudian.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm fine. And you?
Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Right. And Rudian, no doubt joining us from Toronto. First of all, as I said, how things are going with you in Toronto?
It is going. It is hard for the athletes, especially in track and field. There haven't been no meets for the past 2 years. We're going into this to the second year. So most of the athletes, it's stressful. And I physically haven't coached in about a year and a half because of the lockdowns and stuff that we are dealing with and the social distance. So I have one of my assistants is doing all the work with 5 athletes at a time. So I physically haven't been there, but I touch base because it's really hard. A lot of facilities closed down. So this is Canada, it's not America. It's different. Weather too is a hard one too because we are in a cold climate. We're just coming out of it now, going into the spring, summertime. So it might be easier, but we're still on a lockdown until the middle of this month. So a lot of training process is really hard for us to get done. So it's tough. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
All right. Yeah. So and before I go on to Jason has to say briefly too. The program, in 2 programs in particular, that of Harvey Glance last Saturday, and then we had Atto Bolden on Thursday, and they both dealt with track and field and you as a former athlete and now as a coach, is there anything in particular that you took away from those two programs?
Last week with Otto, when I asked the question concerning
Thursday.
on Thursday, forgive me.
Yeah.
When I asked the question concerning his point of view of going professional or going to college,
By the
he
way,
gave me,
we're not seeing you full. When I say
oh,
full,
okay,
yeah, right. So
much better.
yeah, yeah, better
Yeah,
now. Yeah, continue.
yeah. So he did make a very good point in terms of athletes and where they at. However, it's still a challenge. When I look at the world athletes today and I look at young athletes who started out at a young age who sign a contract and where they at now, it's a handful. So it's not a whole lot of athletes who decide I'm going to go pro, coming out of high school, and then you see them 10 years later performing at a high capacity, and we don't see that as much. So I always believe getting that experience in education, going to schools in terms of meets, that is the key thing, because that as an athlete you want to get meets. So going to school and getting that experience, it is for 1 year, to get some meets under your belt is a good thing. On the other hand, you're taking an athlete who could be a world caliber athlete at the age of 18 or 19 and sending them under a different program that might change everything. So it's a battle. So I really appreciate his answers last week, but it's something that people will discuss and people will have their point of view. Yes, education is good, but what I've learned too in education, if I sign a contract with Nike, for example, Nike could also pay for my education. So I don't have to be part of the school, but I can get an education still. That's also part of many contracts. When I had my minor sponsor with Nike, it was more merchandise, and I was finished up with school and everything already when that happened for me. When I was sort of in my prime. So everyone don't get the same thing, but education is a key. If the contract could lead them to getting an education where they don't have to pay for it, that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, yes, he made the point too that different situation for different folks. So, and it's something we'll get around to a bit later on, because we'll bring back the part with Atto as well. And just to let folks know that it's actually day one of the World Athletics relays. The relays should be in action now, and that is something we'll also be we'll be discussing later on as well. So right, so thank you, Rudion. I'll come back to you. So let's see if we can head off to somewhere in St. George's, Grenada, and welcome Jason. Jason, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Bascom. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, I am hearing you clearly, Jason. Right.
Yeah, good afternoon,
So,
and thanks a lot for the invite. I mean, it's always a pleasure. I mean, these conversations are always, well, it seems as though they're never ending, with very little to show for it in terms of where our athletes are, where sport is going. But we're pressing on. We're pressing on. It is. I mean, we're pressing on.
yeah, but Jason, I know you have been following as well, and there are certain things that you would have heard, and certainly would have been a bit intriguing. I know probably boxing for one, what has been happening in boxing would have had your interest. So, as I said, we have a lot to talk about in terms of various aspects of sports. But over the past week or weeks rather, what it is you would have heard that would have really piqued your interest and want to make an input?
From where I sit, I mean, from everything that I would have heard, the differences of opinion, the wrangling, especially now lately boxing, it has brought me to one simple conclusion, that our athletes are the ones suffering here, and the administrators are playing a power game. And only the athletes will suffer in the midst of this power struggle. And it's not just in boxing. It seems to be with every single association that you find. Once people can see the need for $2 to be spent here or there, everybody figures that they want to have the final say in how that $2 should be spent. And the athletes are the one that suffer generally. And sad to say, it is something that continues to happen, not just in Grenada, but I've seen it around the region. And it happens from the head come down. It is literally from the head coming down. And when I say the head, I mean from the main administrators coming down. There needs to be some serious level of sports administration education across the region. The OECS Sports Desk needs to now start making some things mandatory, if you ask me, that people you have to want to give, and you have to want to give meaningfully, and you have to be held accountable. Too often, sports financing has found loopholes somewhere along the line for everybody to make money except the athletes for too long. And I think that is one of the major issues that we have around the Caribbean right now, Pussy.
Well, you made the point that regarding the OECS Sports Desk. Well, we don't really have it up as yet, well, back as yet. But the point is that I am assuming that you advocating for even sports policies, for example,
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
seems as if
yeah.
a number of the countries are operating without a sports policy. So everyone does whatever they feel they could do, and and even for national associations, they're not accountable. They just feel that it's up upon themselves to do whatever they want to do. And as you indicated, ultimately, it's the sportsmen and sportswomen who are being affected. Going forward, what you hope could be done, Jason?
In the absence of order, everything else is chaos. So moving forward, from where I sit here in Grenada, first of all, I believe that the administrators needs to start adopting a serious sports policy. When you admit that you need to adopt this sports policy and you get this sports policy up running, then you put pressure on the administrators of the various sports, um, cricket, football, table tennis, athletics, whatever it is. Some administrations are functioning a little bit better than others, but you can't find any one of them that you can say, okay, this is the model that we need to follow. The GFA, in all honesty, has come close to simply because the GFA has to be responsible to FIFA for what it does with FIFA's money. But that in itself is a different kettle of fish again. Who is FIFA responsible to? It's surely not the local government.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it is like a vicious cycle, and you don't even know where it stops or where it starts.
Mhm. All right. So yeah, fair enough, Jason. So we'll come back to both Jason and Rudian in a moment, but Rudian made the important point about the whole issue regarding the scholarships, and it's a very um, dicey issue because sometimes it boils down to a decision being made, especially at those age. The parents have that decision to make as well, and we have seen, witnessed, heard of many instances where young ones would have left their shows, and let's use Grenada for example, and with all that it was offered in terms of the scholarships, and then we don't hear anything about them after. There have been many cases of those situations there where they have been offered what you call scholarships, but I think most times the folks who are actually signing those things just believe that when you hear scholarship or scholarships, you think everything is paid and the parents have nothing to worry about. Fully paid scholarship. And sometimes it's a myth, right? And we have seen a lot of folks being burnt about that. But let's hear what Atto had to say regarding that whole issue, regarding whether or not the student athlete should reject, what decision they should make, rather, in terms of rejecting, should they reject a six-figure, endorsement from a big sponsor? in lieu of, turning pro, or should they take on the athletic scholarship? So Atto Bolden was speaking on the program on Thursday. Question to you, Rudy and Sylvan, Toronto, Canada. What is your point of view on good athletes going on scholarships or going professional?
I think every situation is different. I tend to be in the middle. The one side of things are people who say, oh, yeah, anybody who's a junior that runs 2-3 good races should go professional. The other side of things is people who say that no matter what, the proper route is to go to an NCAA institution and and get the so-called college experience and all of that. And I disagree with both of those extremes. I think it's somewhere in the middle where each individual is different. The support staff around the person is different, because you can't look at Allyson Felix and say, oh yeah, she should have gone to an NCAA school for a couple of years. No, she was ready out of high school. And I think Allyson Felix has done quite well. Also consider how many athletes who are not American never compete for a university and they do just fine. I'm thinking now of like a Dina Asher Smith, a Johan Blake, a Usain Bolt. Everybody's situation is different. So I read a lot of this stuff online and I go, oh, please. There's a bunch of armchair experts who think that they know this and they know that. Every individual is different. And there are some who will turn pro and fail. And there are some who will go to university for 4 years and come out and be shadows of their former selves because the school has drained them of everything, of anything that they had potentially to be a professional. In fact, I point to the fact that most American household names in track and field left their university early. Justin Gatlin, Christian Coleman, Donovan Brazier, Sanya Richards-Ross. The list goes on and on and on. So and it usually is dependent on age, right? If you have somebody older, they go, no, you have to go to school. You can go to school and not compete for them. That's what Allyson Felix did. That's what many athletes are doing, Brianna Williams included. She is in school. She's just not competing at an NCAA level. There are a lot of people who think they have all the answers, and the truth is that track and field is an evolving thing. And when I graduated high school in 1991, there was not an option to go pro out of high school. It did not exist. People just weren't doing it. It's different now. These athletes are getting well into 6 figures a year. You heard me? 6 figures a year to come out of high school and turn pro. So it's hard for somebody to sit down at their keyboard and tell a young black boy or a young black girl that somehow, no, turn down that $700,000 a year because, you should go and have the college experience. I am too progressive a black man to be encouraging young people to turn down that kind of money.
Well, and just to add that, Kirani James turned pro. He spent just about, a year or so in Alabama. And Anderson Peters,
another very good example of you get in, you get out. The first time somebody gives you an offer you like, get out.
And Anderson Peters also left Mississippi and just graduated, and he's already a pro.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Vex. Gentlemen, I think it's well said by Atto Bolden, and certainly you folks may have something obviously to add. Jason, what you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, really and truly, it boils down. Atto is spot on. I mean, everybody's situation is different. It's difficult to look at a young black man who came from poor parentage, ran his shoes off, got the opportunity, and now you're telling him all that he has dreamt about, he should turn it down at the very first glance in front of him and wait and see what happens later on down the road. Effectively, that's what you're telling him. So, I mean, everybody's situation is different. You grew up in a household, in an environment with money and your family is loaded, then your stakes are different. You can always do things as you go along. As you rightfully say, Kirani James is a perfect example. And Kirani had the fortune having somebody like Harvey Glance in his corner at his table. So, I mean, Harvey Glance, for a lot of people who don't even understand, Harvey Glance was much more than just an athletic coach to Kirani. He was like a father away from dad, that kind of thing. So it, once you find that in your coach, and the opportunity presents itself, depending on your circumstances, you had to go for it. You had to go for it. I mean, look at where we came from. look at what we have or what we don't have. Look at how we struggle to get there. I mean, I know of athletes who had to borrow spikes to run, and they competed at the highest level, and they have a testimony to share. So everybody's situation is different. He's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Certainly, Rudian.
Yeah, most definitely. But still, the bottom line is too. We are both. You are absolutely right. Absolutely right. The circumstances of a family member, families is in need. So you get this contract for them. Then the other part is understanding the contract. Okay, the contract could be you have to do X amount of races or X amount of meet or run certain times to get this. So it's all about in the contract too, because football, basketball, I always say to athletes, you get a chance to go pro, because it's different when you sign. Once you sign with a team, you are part of that team until that team choose to trade you or let you go. In track and field, your contract could say you need to be at this time constantly, or you need to run 3 of these times, or there's certain things that need to be done in between in the contracts. What most of the other athletes do, Kirani did experience college. Yes, he left, but he did went to experience it. Was he good enough coming out of high school to go pro? That's a question. That's a hard question to answer because he never did. We don't know. Alison Felix, she was a different case. Sonia Richards, she was a different case. So she ended up going to school and they left. A lot of other athletes, they end up going to college. They might be a year, they might spend 2 years, but they end up going pro still. So the experiences they may be coming up from high school, maybe they wasn't that good to go pro at the time. So everybody's situation is different. The financial situation for family is a key thing. But you also got to understand in track and field, the contract might be different from NFL or NCAA or NFL or going to the NBA. It'll be totally different.
Mm-hmm. Quite a lot to decipher on that, and obviously, as we indicated, in a decision that the parents, sometimes it boils down to the parents, but then it also means whether or not the parents are well informed. I don't want to say educated enough, but well informed, and sometimes and Jason alluded to that. How would you tell someone who sees an opportunity to get himself out of poverty, for example, to turn down such an offer? You probably never had $100 or probably $500 in their bank account before, and all because of talent. There's an opportunity for them to have thousands of dollars. Almost $1 million a year. And it's a tough decision, and sometimes, as Atto is in it, so he knows. He's coaching. He is a semi-agent himself, and he is in the boardroom at times, negotiating, etc. So he knows what's at stake. I want to go back to Jason, because Jason, I want to touch on the issue of what has transpired with boxing within the last week or so, in particular in the news, and what you have been hearing, from quote unquote both sides, because I saw where there was a story regarding the Boxing Association of Grenada, and they contacted the reporter at the end, said he contacted the president well, the one who was selected as president, for a comment, and I didn't think he said he refused, but there was something about no comment, you know. But Jason, the whole issue of boxing. I mean, you have been around for a while. You have, you know, witnessed boxing. You know, you have been to boxing cards, whether it's at Tantine, whether it's at the youth center. You have known many of the folks who have been involved in boxing in terms of boxing administrators and boxers themselves. It's a sad situation for boxing, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the funny thing is, only the athletes suffer in the midst of this chaos. I don't agree. As a president, there will never be a situation that speaks to no comment. Even if you want to play some cricket and do some spin bowling, there must be something that you're going to have to say to bring your point across. Because no comment as a president is generally a weak move. Generally. Even if you want to, add a different dimension to the question that is asked, I think you can do that. The ball will be in your court to do that. But first of all, a no comment response is a weak move. Um, there are some folks who have been around, and Bunny has been around boxing for quite a while. Bunny has is probably one of the first, if not the first, Olympian for Grenada. So he has been around this sport, so he understands a lot of what these athletes go through, these boxers go through. He has been the recipient of that struggle. He knows about that, so he can attest to what I'm speaking of. But one of the things that disappointed me from everything that I've been hearing is the exclusion of a lot of key people within the fraternity. Give people the opportunity to excuse themselves. Bring people up to speed with new rules and engagements if there are new rules and engagements coming from your regional or international bodies. Give them the opportunity to educate themselves on those rules, even if it meant, if from where I sit, pushing back the elections a little bit, um, you know, provided that it could have happened within the constitutional framework, because I don't know if they have a constitution that they work with now. But I'm saying that there must have been some way to make sure that everyone was included in this process. Because I listened to an interview of a few days ago with one of the coaches, and when a guy who gets his face punched in can sit down and look at you after, and tears come from his eyes because he's hurt, not from blows that he would have received physically, but he's now crying for the sport. It's touching. It's touching, and you know, I ask myself one question: where are the national administrators in all of this? Because at the end of the day, this is the Grenada Boxing Association. And while the Grenada Boxing Association may have its own constitution and whatnot, and they have their rules and their regulations as an association, they're responsible to this wonderful place we call Grenada. And I believe that the ministers involved, the folks at the various sports desks around the country, um, they had to play a role. They must have played a role somewhere to ensure that everyone was included, and that we get the best coming out of this for the boxers. Now, what we find is that a bunch of boxers are here quarreling because they are not pleased, and the administrators are sitting down saying, this is what we're doing. So there's that tension inside is too real. And I believe that it has to be fixed with urgency, because you don't want the wrong precedents being established. This is bigger than boxing. This is about all other sports as well. So you don't want the wrong precedents to be established. And next thing, everybody find themselves in a chaotic situation. Somebody needs to take this bull by the horn.
Jason, you believe and that, you know, associations, well, national associations that carry Grenada should have a little more responsibility or accountability, especially when, you know, it's something like Boxing Association of Grenada, Grenada Football Association, Grenada Netball Association, that there must be some level of accountability to Grenada first.
Of course, of course, of course, and I believe that firmly. And I speak from my experience. Even I mean, and let me just go back here briefly, and I wouldn't spend long. But I was president of the Grenada Steel Band Association, voted in based on an executive, and is only after when this whole hullabaloo started with a couple of people wanting to be in control, ignoring the role of the president and the executive, I realized that even up to today, the Grenada Steel Band Association is owned by three people who are associated with big flourishing bands. And I am saying, if these people are the people that signed this document as the owners of the Steel Band Association, how did this thing get past the Attorney General's office? How? Without a proper constitution, without a proper framework and a proper organization to say this is a proper not-for-profit organization. And how did we get how did all of this get through that office to the point now where if the government has to make a contribution to the Grenada Steel Band Association, it makes a contribution to three people? This is wrong. And I'm just using that as an example to say, once you carry the name Grenada, there must be something somewhere inside there that says, hey, this is not about you. This is about the sport, first and foremost, the athletes thereafter. This is not about the administrators. You know, the administrators are there just to administrate and to guide, basically, just to guide. But this is not about you. And I believe every organization that carry that name, you know, the Grenada this, or the St. Lucia this, or the Trinidad and Tobago this, you have to be responsible to your home country, to your state, to the laws of this land. And you can't carry that name, and you can't get funding, and you can't benefit without having all those checks and balances and systems in place. Anything other than that is Stephen. Call it by any name you want, is Stephen.
Well, I guess as much in the absence of policy and national sports policy, we do have those things happening. Rudian?
On me, most definitely. One of the things that I've been seeing, and I love my country, I love Grenada, to the core of me, and I always want to see us on top of the world. I always want to see us on top. One of the issues, being a young lad growing up in Grenada to this day, a few changes, but it's almost the same thing. So you're hoping to do the same thing over and year after year after year to get the different results. And that's one of the key things. And I think one of the issue is there is no room in almost every organization in Grenada, or even within the Caribbean itself, you see in sports organization that's open up for a new generation. We are in a pandemic now where everything is going to be different. This change that we're going through in sports could be for the next 10 years, before anything could go back to some sort of normalcy. And we hope not, but within that, making sure that people are updated on their shots now and moving forward. That's something that we have to be able to look into. And the people that they're in position now, are they willing to get involved in making sure those things happen? So they have to be able to open up for a younger generation. And this is my issues in Grenada. And constantly, I might be biased in any way. People may say what they want to say. But I believe in Grenada, they need to open up for a younger generation, or at least groom a young generation to come on up to take over. We have the same people in position over and year after year, and then you feel there is some sort of biasness even in selecting team, or or people going places, or we talk about finances. We have to be able to change. We got to want to change, and the people need to step up and say we need change. So for change to happen, Either the people need to step up, organization have to go back on the drawing board, because you cannot organize sports the same way now moving forward in this time that we're living in presently with this pandemic. Sports cannot be the same. It has to change. And if the people there is not willing to change that, they have to leave. They have to go, because you talk about the new president don't want to answer a question. It doesn't matter. Your job is to answer questions. Your job is to represent boxing. That's your job. So in spite of what it is or how you may feel, someone asks you a question in terms of media, answer the question. No change. So moving forward, I think that's what it is. My key thing is people need to move on and allow a new generation to come in. People who really love the sport, people who want to get involved, people who want to see change, people who want to see good things happen. And if until that happen, we are going to constantly going around in circles with the same thing, the same results, year after year after year after year, and money is pouring in into some of the sports, but no results.
Well, the only thing about that is, Rudian, is that there may be the question of whether or not young folks want to be part of the process. Do they have interest? Are there, any incentives for them to attract them to, the whole process? And whether or not, what is happening there now is, is anything encouraging for them to be part of, But let me just, I know Jason will laugh. Your good friend Lincoln Torrey Deputy the same. Jason was good at table tennis and cricket. I hear he tried boxing, but he get real beat up like another Wolfman finger, so he quit boxing.
Bascom, let me just say, right, that I have never been fond of taking blows. So Toro is spot on with the first part of his comment. But as it relates to trying boxing, no, I stuck to commentary. A lot of people, well, many of you would know I spent more than half my life in the media. So sports commentary, I spent a lot of my life doing that with boxing. But you see, coming back to this point quickly, Bascom, let me tell you, let me say this, for example. And Rudion is so much on point. It is time for younger people to hold these reins. No, if we don't come out of COVID better than we went in, we have failed ourselves. Because COVID has to have taught us something, and a lot of things, I should say. We must come out of this situation better than we went in. Anything other than that is failure. Listen to this. How can I have all the respect in the world for Mr. Royston Lahey? I mean, Mr. Lahey looked at me growing up as a little boy. He's both my fathers. Mr. Lahey and my father's companion. I have the utmost respect for him. But I can't be comfortable knowing that the Grenada Olympic Association, Mr. Royston Lahey is sitting as committee, mm-hmm. sitting as the president for what, 38 years or some ridiculous 28, some ridiculous number of years like that. I mean,
first and only.
There must be a point where you say, listen, guys, I've had enough. I'm not going back. I think I've done my part of it. Now let me pass the baton on. I mean, there must be some point in your life when you can say that. Every time I have seen athletes, I've seen Grenada send away 15 or 8 or 10, 12 athletes to the Olympics with matching number of officials and sometimes even more. So we send more officials than athletes, and we're comfortable with that. And there's something drastically wrong with that. We have to get to the stage where, and I have respect for my senior citizens, I believe to be honored. I believe that they must be with honor for the roles that they would have played, for the sacrifices that they would have made. Gypsy sang a song about that, Yesterday's Children, and I hold that song dear to my heart. But a lot of these older people in positions are still trying to relive or establish their glory days from umpteen years ago, and the world has changed. And now is the time that we have to give our young people the opportunity for road to run and do what they need to do to develop in various aspects.
If I can add something to that, if you allow me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that too, we need an older generation. We grew up, we need that grandparents around us to kind of instill us, to continue instilling us the things that matter. So we need the older generation for the guidance, but we need a younger generation in the time that we're living in. I have an athlete that I'm coaching who is who been on the world stage, and she's in school, but I am the one in charge of her per se. I don't coach her right now because she's in school, but I consider her still my athlete. And my connection with the country that she is an island in the Caribbean, and the person in charge don't have a cell phone. They don't carry a cell phone. You don't have a cell phone. We are in this time now. So if you don't try to, and he's an older person. So that's what I'm saying. You have to move up with the generation and the time that we live in it. This Olympics is going to be different from any other Olympics ever. Some countries or islands may not send a full team because it would not be the same. If my understanding is wrong, based on what I've read, and that could change, the athletes have to be there 2 days before they compete. And when they're done, they have to go home. How are you going to have a team of 12 where two might be finished now and the next goes in the next 3 or 4 days that they have to leave? Who is going to go with them? When I went to the Olympics for Grenada, I love my country. We had 7 officials and 3 athletes. How can we move forward? How can we get anywhere when people want to travel and go places and the athletes is just being left behind, and you expect to get results when you have those type of behaviors?
Well, it was Vollen Springer who said last week that the some of the officials know when and where they are going even before the athletes, and it's an important point you make in terms of the participation, because even the world relays that's taking place now, some of the top teams, Jamaica, Bahamas, even I know Canada had a good 4x4 team. Most of those countries are out of the world relays. Would have thought that they would have been affected to that extent, knowing for a fact that yes, the Olympics is in Tokyo and Japan has its problems there, but would have thought the effects would have been so far-fetched in terms of even the world relays, and which to some extent carries a lot of excitement, but talking about the world relays, we heard from Harvey Glantz that one of the reasons, and he gave reasons why Kirani has never really, since 2012, has not really been involved in participating in relays representing Grenada. And, the questions have been asked time and time again, and folks wanted to know why it is that Grenada is not in the relays. For example, at one point in time, Grenada had at least 3 quarter-milers ranked in the top 10 in the world. And yet for all, there were countries who did not have even one single quarter-miler in the top 10, but were actually on the medal podium for world relays and what have you. And the question was why? And it all had to do with having the athletes having the team rather qualifying and running the qualifying times consistently. Because, for example, the World Relays this weekend is actually a qualifier for the Olympics. So the top 16 teams will make it to the Olympics. And what will happen most likely is that once you finish the World Relays, so let's say in the final, you make it to the final, it's actually an automatic qualification for the Olympics, because even if you finish last, even if you finish eighth, you actually qualify. But quite a lot to talk about in terms of that. But let's hear what Harvey Glantz had to say regarding specifically Kirani's participation in relays. Why it is that Kirani is not competing in the relays?
Well, one, in relays now, because he's away from the collegiate scene, most relays that are run in competition are relays that are run by countries. And we have been so close to putting together a relay team with Grenada. But it's never really panned out when all 4 athletes, or 5 or 6, because you got to have about 5 or 6 athletes at 400 meters to really compete at major championships. Because there's a good chance that Kirani will be running the open 400 meter. There's a good chance that someone else qualifies in the 400 meter like he did Rondale Bartholomew in 11 and Chaplin in 16 at the Olympics. That one of those guys will be able to run the round, because you can't risk not making the finals. You just don't run a relay just to be running. You want to run a relay to try to medal. And so we've had some great 400 meters runners come out of Grenada. I just named 3 of them. Can you imagine Rondale, Braylon, Kirani, and just one more that could probably run 45 flat, 45-1. You had 3 guys that could probably split 43 seconds or better if they were able to all stay around. Unfortunately, Rondale ran into some injuries from after 2011, and Braylon after 2016, is not around anymore, and Kirani is still there, but we haven't had a lot of 400 meter runners from Grenada just kind of pop up at the same time and within the same cycle. And there's another good 400 meter runner, I think, now at Barton County that's going on. So really the reason why we haven't put together the 4x4 is that it's all timing. It's just people are popping up at the wrong time. And the consistent model in this whole thing has been Kirani. And he's been there, but we've been waiting for the other 3 or 4 athletes to kind of be with him. So the reason why we haven't run relays is because there haven't been relays that we could run at a high level. We can run to get work just as we did at the Penn Relays. Now, you talked about that 43 5 relay split that he had at Penn Relays. Well, he ran great, and Rondale was on that relay as well. But the overall time was 3:08. Colleges run that.
Yeah. That's probably you might get a high school coming close to that.
Right.
Too. Yeah.
Right. Well, high schools is close to that. I mean, so you got to at least at a major championship be up under 3 minutes. And I just said with those athletes 3 of those athletes I just named, all have been in major championship. They were always missing 1 or 2 that will allow one of the top 2 or 3 400 meter guys to have rest. So it's a formula, but it's also being realistic that if you can't break 3 minutes at a major championship or run right at 3 flat, you're not going to medal.
Yes, guys, what you thought about what Coach Harvey Glantz had to say regarding Grenada's participation in relays? I think you have a clearer understanding as to why.
If I may go first.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of my thing about representing a country, to me, it's honor. It's not about winning and losing. I had a chance to represent Canada when I went to the Olympics in 2000, or at least get the opportunity to be on the team. And I choose to go for Grenada when I get the phone call. Because it's honor, something I always wanted to do, having the Grenadian colors. Win or lose, draw or tie, it doesn't matter. Just representing the country that means something to me. And there are coaches, if you can't win, we're not going to go. And I don't think like that when it comes to countries. Getting the country out there. There are many athletes, myself included, run for Grenada in the Olympics, but never get a medal. Kirani was the first one. Doesn't make him better than any other athlete, whoever run or wear the colors for Grenada. Yes, he was the first one to go on the podium, but there has been many prior to him that wear that color proudly and walk into the stadium and the flag is waving proudly. So to me, relay is about a team or a country going out there more than winning. If we only think of winning, we may never have teams out there. In my opinion, I think once we get out there, some people need to get the experience. Teams need to get the experience. Let them represent Grenada. Let them run. They may not be in the Olympics, but they can go to another meet where they can compete. But you have to give them the chance. Just give them the chance to at least qualify, and you make a decision then. Don't not do it because of this person and because of that. At least give them the chance and represent the country. Let the colors fly. Let we go there. Everyone that's there, the 16 teams, somebody will come last. Somebody will come first, but they are representing the country. And the country is so proud of them just to see the colors is out there. And that's to me, when it comes to the Olympics and the Olympics itself, because the World Championship is money, when it comes to the Olympics itself, that it is to me is the country, getting our country flag wave in countries or having a Grenadian be that in that part of the world where no Grenadian probably ever been. That's my take.
Okay. Jason?
I agree with what William said. I agree with that. But let me add another dimension to it. When Kirani ran in the Olympics and Kirani won that Olympic gold medal for Grenada, let me tell you what our administrators miss. And I'm harping on the administrators here, and I'll tell you why. Let me tell you what our administrators missed. Our administrators missed that every young athlete who thought about running the 400-meter suddenly got the energy, the urge, the drive, and the passion to go out there and do it. And guess what? We missed that opportunity. Harvey Glant said it right. For you to have a successful team running in a 4x4 relay, you need to have at least 6 guys who can perform, 4 at elite level and another 2 right there as backup, right? That can, give you something decent, yeah? 45 at least, 45, maybe 46, you can push it. No, we missed that opportunity. Don't get me wrong here now. This is not for the Minister for Sport to do. This is not for the people working in the Ministry of Sport to do. But what they had to do was to find the right people to put in place to now harness the talents that we have. We have some people here in Grenada who are capable of harnessing that talent and bringing them to a certain level. Kirani didn't just wake up and end up in the laps of Harvey Glantz, right? There was a process in getting him there, and those people live here still. No, we missed that opportunity to take these young fellas and say, listen, or these young folks, girls and guys, and say, hey, if you're really serious about running the 4, now let us see how we can take your skill, your talent, and develop on it, because they are now motivated more than ever. Once that would have happened, what we would have seen now is the ability for more young people coming forward. Maybe an organization, a group of people, doesn't have to be from Grenada now. that would be able to take these young people and say, hey, I like this guy here that's running. I like this girl here that's running. Let's see how we can give an opportunity to him or her. Let's see. And then you would have found that more people would have been walking in the footsteps, in the shadows of Kirani James moving forward. In the absence of that, what we ended up with is a workhorse in Kirani James having to fly this flag, having to push for Grenada, having to push for himself, and Grenada still expecting the world from him, even though we understand that his medical condition doesn't allow him to be where he once was. He's still pushing, but guess what? Everybody else who came up, because they have that nurturing to take them to that next level, they fell by the wayside. And Harvey is saying that no one else came through. He's right to a point. From where he sits, nobody else came through. But the problem is there were people here waiting to break through that never got the opportunity to expound on what they had.
Yeah.
And if I just add on that too, sorry, Mike. A lot of athletes today who is abroad, in Canada, England, United States, who are coming from Grenadian parents, or even Grenadian himself, who is out here competing. The opportunity for them to represent Grenada is so hard. You see the difference with Jamaica and other islands in the Caribbean where, the mother or father might be from that country, then they represented a country. A part of that Grenada don't allow, because they don't know that person. And I'm only saying that, and somebody might come and dispute what I'm saying, but I'm saying that because I get hands-on from someone who was at the Ministry of Sports in track and field itself, that come to me with that information. They put somebody out there who is a Grenadian, and they said, I don't know that person, so that person never get a chance to go to Caribbean Games. So we have to be able to expand. Like I said, it's a change. We're in a different era, different time, and for Grenada flag in every single sport, for us to be able to expand and be on top in the world, which I think we can, or be reckoned with, or let our name be sound out there, we have to open up for people outside of Grenada who also are Grenadians. And that's one of the things that also have to happen. We cannot only focus on those who are in Grenada only. We have to expand it, and reach out there and find athletes out there, soccer players, netball, and whichever sport it is, boxing, whichever sport it is, swimming, and find our Grenadians out there, because they're on the globe now. We are out there, and let us have the best team representing Grenada. This is not local anymore. This is for Grenada, and you want your best team. Every other country do it. They have the best athletes out there when it comes to when they go into the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
Bascom, if let me just remind, bring your remembrance to something here. You realize that for the last 5 times that we've had the intercall games in Grenada, the winner of that championship was decided by the final race, which coincidentally is the 4x400
4
meter.
by 4. Yeah, 4 by 4. Yeah.
All right. If that is not a sign for us, then I don't know what is. We're walking around with blinkers.
It was the same thing when I was there in Magna College. It was the 4x4, the final race.
The 4 by 4 has determined the champions for quite a while at intercall, well, except probably for the girls when St. David's Catholic Secondary School dominated for a while. But then even of recent, we have seen that the final event has been determined the champions of intercall. There's more to discuss regarding what those gentlemen said over sprinting in the Caribbean, whether there's any next bolt on the horizon, the 400 meters being the most competitive event anticipated for the Olympics, as well as broadcasting, sports broadcasting, I should say. Ato had something to say about that, no doubt, and we have quite a number to say. But I want to put a question to you directly, and each one will give their turn in terms of what do you see as strategies or plans that should be instituted by countries, Caribbean countries in particular, in the post-pandemic era regarding how to go about rebuilding the sports sector? As indicated, that no doubt sports will be on the chopping blocks, and therefore we need new thinking. It cannot be business as usual. We cannot resume business as usual. You know, where we left off in, early 2020, it can't be a situation where we just hit the pause or, and resume. There must be some new thinking. Gentlemen, what do you think should be some of the strategies? I know it may be just off the cuff, but I think you're smart enough. What do you think are some of the strategies, initiatives that could be instituted by Caribbean countries in terms of rebuilding the sports sector in a post-pandemic era? Who's going first? Okay, Jason is going first.
Let me say that I don't have all the answers, and I don't think anyone has all the answers. Where I sit, I think right now, as we're in this pandemic here, it is a very opportune time for us to first of all focus on the administrative side of sports across the board. And yeah, I am kind of big on administration because I remember what it was like operating without administration. And I realized that some of us who played sport at different levels, locally and for Grenada, we were, I mean, we were nothing short of miracle workers. I remember a lot of people may not remember this story, and I hope he's not upset with me for sharing it. But Wagiti got so upset one night at the airport. The national team, I think, came back from one of these islands for OECS, one OECS, and at the airport, and Wagiti had to look for a ride to get to go off. And he was so emotionally, um, you know, beaten by that because with all the pride and joy you come back, you just win OECS Grenada. And Wagiti broke his racket on his knees and said, "That's it. That's it." I mean, he played table tennis after, but not at that serious level of wanting to represent Grenada anymore. No, I'm saying all of that to make the point to say our administrative side of sport needs some serious attention. We don't pay enough attention to it, and that is a problem. Our athletes need to understand that as a table tennis player, I need to focus on table tennis. As a football player, I need to focus on playing football. As a cricketer, I need to focus on when I get to the wicket or when I hold that little red cherry in my hand running up. Um, they don't need to be focusing on the other issues. The netballers, the goal shoot needs to focus on practicing her shots. That is the reason why you have the front office, right? And so this pandemic era here has to bring us to the point where we need to focus on the administrative side of it. Let us now sit back and look and say, okay, this is where we went wrong. Let us be honest with ourselves. This is where we went wrong. This is what we are doing. This is what we have been doing that we've been getting this results. If we go back into after the pandemic doing the same thing, then guess what? We're going to get the same results, maybe even worse. So now is an opportune time for us to first of all look at that and put proper systems and structures in place. We also now have to pay attention to our coaches. How do we develop our coaches? How do we get our coaches properly certified? What do we do? How do we go about? What courses are available, even online, to get them, up to another level? So they now can impart that knowledge to the younger ones coming up. What is happening in the meantime with these younger ones? Everything has to happen simultaneously. Now, our young athletes who are not in competition need to be motivated to say, okay, even though I'm not in competition, I need to keep training. I need to stay focused. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them focused? That in itself is another issue. There are so many things that need urgent attention. Sports don't need to be on the chopping block. When we're talking health, we're talking sports too. When we're talking education, we're talking sports too. So sports doesn't need to be on the chopping block. The administrators of the various sport need to take themselves off the chopping block and say, hey, this is what we are going to do. This is what we're doing. So when this thing opens up, we are going to be ready. And I think that is where it has to start.
Okay. Rudian?
But most definitely, everything you said there is so true. Um, they have to go back to the drawing board. Post pandemic is going to be a chaos across the globe, across the Caribbean, not only in the Caribbean, all over. But they have to have a serious budget. And once they know what the budget is, it's easier for them to know how to work things and how to go forward. They need to have serious medical staff too. That is the key thing moving forward. Making sure that medical people is involved now, even in training days, and having they have to be regularly being tested, and it's a lot. So they just have to go back to the drawing board. But to me, the one key thing is once they have a financial budget, we have $20,000 we need to work with for the year. It will be more than that, but I'm just saying. Um, then they need to know what they're doing. If they get cut, it used to be 20,000, now it's 15. Okay, guys, what do we need to cut out? What do we need to do? What is the important thing? So they just have to a financial budget is a key start, and then from that they would know where to go to the drawing board and sit down and discuss.
Okay. All right. I think we have yes, right. So I was just following up on the world relays. I see we move on to the female now, the men 4x4 that was in action, and unfortunately Great Britain seems to be out because they dropped the baton, and that's the nature of the beast. I know most times in the 4x1 you have the dropping of the baton, not in a 4x4. In a 4x4 you, even if it's dropped, you have the opportunity to pick up and go and still, but again, as
You see,
well,
but with
yes,
the 4 by
well,
4 the 4
everything
by
is
4 is now a sprint, yeah.
the
So
400
4
is
by
now a sprint.
400 is
Yeah.
now a sprint. So
So,
yeah,
and I'm glad you mentioned about 400 is almost a sprint, because is a segment that I want to go in with both Harvey Glance and Otto Bolin had to say regarding that 400 meters. While Harvey Glance zoomed in on the Kirani James factor in terms of the 400 meters, Otto Bolin took a holistic view in terms of what we can expect regarding the 400 meters. And the hunger, the Gardner, the Fred Curley, the Norman, Michael Norman, Van de Kirk, just name it. And when you look at that, you really have to see that Kirani does have company. Really, he has company. So let's hear first from Harvey Glance regarding the 400 meters, and then we go over to Otto Bolin.
Karani James has done more for 400 meters than any other event in track and field. When he went as an 18-year-old to South Korea and won the 400 meters at 18 years old, he gave every young 400-meter runner in the world hope. Because before that, it was just an event where everybody kind of backed off and they allowed the veteran athletes to do their thing. A lot of the younger athletes never felt like they really belonged. They maybe felt like they needed time to mature. But what Karani did was enlighten every young 400-meter runner in the world. By the time we got to the Olympic Games in London, there had only been 9 athletes that had broken 44 seconds. Karani became the 10th in London when he ran 43.97. 94, I'm sorry, 43-94. And it lasted from 1960 something to 2012. Well, to give you the sonic boom of 400 meters and how quick it happened, in 2015 at the World Championships in Beijing, 25 athletes in that meet broke 45 seconds. 25. And 44 seconds usually will win competitions anywhere, any place, anyhow. But to have 25 athletes in one competition go up under 45 seconds, to me was just unbelievable. And of course, in the final, all three athletes who medaled in that meet all broke 44 seconds. Van Niekerk, LaShawn Merritt, and Karani Jane. And in that same competition, two more athletes broke 44 seconds in the semifinals. So in one competition, you had 5 athletes in that competition go up under 44 seconds. When in 2012, 3 years prior, only 9 had done it in almost 50 years. And now as we speak, in 2021, there are many more who have broken 44 seconds. It is, without a doubt, the ticket to watch, as they did in Rio 5 years ago, and Van Niekerk setting the world record, and Karani and LaShawn again breaking 44 seconds. It is taken off. And the last year, 2 years ago at the World Championship, 43-4 won it. and it's just an event that you don't know what's going to happen, but there are so many more people now that are running so much faster. And unlike any other event, if you look at how it's taken off, it is without a doubt probably the most improved event in all track and field.
And do you think that we will sooner or later probably see a sub 43? Is it possible?
Well, we can always think that, but until it's done, we can't say it's going to happen. But I will say this, I can guarantee you that's the goal of every 43-point runner that has laced them up, is to be the first to break 43 seconds. That's got to be the goal. If you're not thinking that way, you're going to be left behind.
Guys, hold on to your thoughts. Hold on to your thoughts. Quite a lot from Harvey Glantz regarding that. Hold on to your thoughts. What you make of the men's 400 meters at the Olympics and, probably the Diamond League?
Well, it's the only event that gave us, it's the only sprint event that gave us a world record in 2016 at the Rio Games. I wouldn't say now that it's out of the question to get another world record, but I study numbers and I know this. In 2016 at the Rio Olympic Games, Machel Cedeno from Trinidad and Tobago ran just over 44 seconds and came home with no medal. That's the first time that anybody had ever gone to the Olympics in history, run 44.0 anything, and come home with nothing. I think that the way these young guys are looking, we might for the first time in Tokyo see somebody run 43 and go home with nothing, because Wade Van Niekerk obviously has a lot to prove. Michael Norman is very frustrated at not being able to have a full season over the last couple of years, including in 2019 when he was unable to advance to the final. Gardner is looking for his respect because he feels like people are not taking him as seriously as they should. He's run as fast as Michael Norman. He runs good 200. He runs good 100, just like all the other guys. Curly always runs with a chip on his shoulder, and that's before we start to talk about Grenada's own Karani James. So there are so many guys who are capable of being on that podium. There are so many guys who already, their body knows what 43 feels like, that I don't think that you can not be excited about what is possible in Tokyo, because you, like I said, you may run 43.9 or 8 and be off of the podium, and that's never happened before. So that to me is exciting, and I think that the 400 promises to be one of the best events in the entire Olympics, as it was in 2016.
Okay, guys. Could you imagine someone running 43 point and cannot be on the, the medal tape, the podium? This is it's quite possible. I mean, what we're hearing from Atude is quite possible, because these guys are running very. I mean, look at that. Kirani opened with a 44. Probably 2-3 years ago, he will open with a 45. And that was more or less a world leading time. If you cannot open with a sub 44, if you're not running consistently sub 45, something is wrong, because the 400 meters, as he alluded to and as we've seen, has become one of the marquee events in, whether it's in Diamond League or whether it is at the World Championships or even at the Olympic in some of athletics. The 100 was a foregone conclusion. Bolt will win, and etc. Except the false start, etc., etc. But with the 400 meters, because of this, the spread in terms of the talents, it creates that level of excitement, and that it has become now the go-to event, the must-see event. Is almost made for TV. Jason?
But I mean, when you open up your season, you loosen up with 44. When whoever thought nobody ever thought we would see somebody 90 miles per hour until what's my Vincentian partner? They named Nixon McLean, bowling at 90 something miles per hour with ease, and Izzy Loosener. 44 as an opener with Kirani James. People are sportsmen and women, athletes are setting their benchmark higher for themselves, and that is an awesome thing. But let me just show you this. Let me tell you why I believe it is very possible, and we will see it. Ato made a very serious point. We may see athletes running under 44 and not coming home with a medal. Wayne van Niekerk broke the record at the 2016 Olympics, running 43.3. But guess what? The real shout is that was done in the outermost lane.
Mm-hmm.
So if this guy ran with that same fear and fire and venom in a lane somewhere in the middle of the pack, that 43.03 could be very much under 43, easy. And that is my benchmark for it. That is my barometer, I should say, for it. Because if you could run that in the outermost lane at an Olympic final, I mean, I can't remember somebody running a 200 meter in the outermost lane or the 400 meter in an outermost lane and winning in an Olympic game. I think that was the first time it happened. I might be wrong, but I can't remember it happening before. And to break the world record at that, well, we in for something dynamic. We haven't seen yet, but we have to hold on to our seats, because it is quite possible.
Well, I been around track and field for quite some time, and I don't believe any athlete will run 42 point. I've seen it. I've seen athletes come around, seen athletes do certain things. I'm looking at the time, especially now.
Yeah,
And if
but probably 5 years ago, we may have said that we may not see anyone running a 43. Oh, times have changed. Things are changing.
it's so funny when you
And
said
I
that.
mean, if Van de Kock could run, and as Jason said, in the outer lane, a 43.03, and if Van de Kock is in the best of health, because we knew what happened to him after in terms of his the injury, etc., etc. And at that time you had basically a Kirani James and LaShawn Merritt as probably the fiercest competitors. But with a Michael Norman, we have Gardner, we have Fred Curley, and again we don't know who are the others who may be coming out of the college scene now. I mean, it could be one of the most competitive events in history. Let's say all the guys are well, including a Kirani James factor. You still think that a sub 43 is not possible?
No.
And why?
I've seen it. I look at Michael Norman, and his best time is 43:45, and that was 2019. And we're looking at 5 years ago, the world record break. You're looking at time, and if we're looking for it this year, because this is the only time I've seen it happening, if it's going to happen. Because I don't see no one that's coming up right now that can do that. But I'm looking at the time we're living in, the pandemic, the cycle, the training, the different things these guys have to go through. I'm not seeing it happening. I'm just looking at it. I believe someone could have break Michael Johnson record. I said it before. I didn't know who, but I've said it before. He can do it. In my personal opinion, if anyone have to run that fast, had to be someone who is no longer in the sport. And to me, it was going to be Usain Bolt. That's my humble opinion. I don't think anyone could run that fast. I think the only one that could have done it, run under 43, was Usain Bolt. And I don't think any of the athletes there today in this Olympics couldn't do it, because if it don't happen now, I don't see it happening ever again. Because based on everything that's going on, it is just, I don't see it happening. But that's my opinion.
Well, Atobolin said
Pascal, let me
men. Yeah, Atobolin said men lie, women lie. Time doesn't lie, I think it was Ato who said that.
Right. I'm looking at all these guys in them top time. And right now I'm looking at the world. Kirani's number 11 all time in the world ever. And the time he won that was 2014. So I'm looking at the time of when he did. These guys, they do get older in age. A lot of different things happen for them.
I'm glad you said age. I'm glad you said age, because you remember the same Atobolin came with terms of age, and he says it's not so much about age, but it's about the mileage. But let's hear what Jason has to say. Jason.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, sir. I believe, right? First of all, I believe that Van de Kock went into the finals as a non-factor in terms of the media hype and everything surrounding that 400-meter final. He was a threat, and maybe I shouldn't say a non-factor. I should say he went in there not as a major threat. Not as a major threat. I want to rephrase that. He went in there not as a major threat, because the world was really looking at Kirani James and LaShawn Merritt. But this guy ended up in lane 8, the outermost lane, and probably said to himself, you see them two fellas in the back there? Me have no time with them. Me and sticking around to find out what they're made of. I go in from the jump, and I go run this thing as a real sprint. If I fall after, that is it. And he went out there and he threw everything, including the kitchen sink, left nothing at all, and went out. Now, I believe that if he had run in one of the inner lanes, maybe, just maybe, the outcome of the race would have been slightly different. But I'm saying no. If you line up these guys again, everybody in perfect health, going the way they went in 2016, and Wayne Van Niekerk is not in lane 8, but he's somewhere between 4 and 6. that under 43 is more than possible, much more than possible. That's my belief. I mean, Rudion would differ, of course, but I believe it is very possible.
No, and I look at, like, again, I look at, the time that we're in now. You guys have been missing a lot of training session, a lot of stuff, a lot of things they haven't done. So I'm just looking at it. I'm not trying to say it can happen, but to me, I don't believe it is. And I don't see none of these guys in there that can do it based on what they have done in the past, the time we're living in, when they did it to now, the circumstances they'll be going in. Regardless if all of them is in there, the season just started. Like I say, if they're full of health, it's going to be a very good race. But I still don't think there is weather. There's the weather also have a big factor in everything. So it's a lot. But if it happen, it's a sight to see. If it don't happen, it's still a sight to see if all these guys and then could be together in one, under the same umbrella, running the same race. It'll be an awesome race.
All right, but we have 3 other pieces from Arto that I want you to comment on, and two in particular have to do with track and field, and the other one has to do with sports in general, which is broadcasting. But let me just say, Ray Roberts is saying Happy Workers' Day. Michael and Toro, solidarity forever. Happy birthday to you also, Ray. It's Ray's birthday today. Happy birthday to you, Ray. And what's a day for Ray?
I sent him his birthday greetings early this morning because he sent me mine yesterday. So we've been doing this for years. So
okay, Oh yes, and belated to Jason. I forgot. Yeah, belated to Jason Skeet. So yeah, and I guess as much it would have been a nice day today for probably you and Ray to play a little table tennis, Jason. So yeah, so Atto has been, speaking quite a bit, and the next issue had to do with Usain Bolt, and whether or not we'll really see someone filling the shoes of Usain Bolt. Atto says no, he doesn't see that. Bolt brought not just winning and sprinting to the table, but he brought charisma. He brought so many other things that even if there's someone who's winning, they are not bringing the full picture as Bolt. Bolt brought everything, likable, funny, so many things, and that is his reason why he's saying that he doesn't think that there will be someone else like Bolt. Let's hear from Atto Bolt then. The question to you now is that who do you see as, I don't want to say the next Usain Bolt, but Bolt had carried the Caribbean for the better part of a decade or so in terms of global attention. Do you see anyone right now in the Caribbean who can follow that feat?
Who before Bolt from the Caribbean had that level of success, attention, persona, dominance? You could say Malene, but Malene didn't win as often as Bolt. We've obviously had phenomenal athletes from the Caribbean. I mean, on the women's side, Shirley-Ann Fraser-Price is almost Bolt's equal. But the combination of the domination, the winning, and the personality, I think everybody who opens their mouth to say so-and-so is going to be the next Usain Bolt, it's not going to happen. Not in my lifetime. I would be very surprised to see it, because you're going to have athletes who are good. You're going to have athletes who may dominate. But the combination of being good, dominating, and having that personality, that happens once in a generation if you're lucky. So I disagree, and I kind of roll my eyes when people say, oh, this one is going to be the next Usain Bolt. Think of that. It's almost, I am old enough to remember when everybody was going to be the next Michael Jordan, right? Vince Carter was going to be the next Michael Jordan. Harold Miner was going to be the next Michael Jordan. Anthony Hardaway was going to be the next Michael Jordan. How'd that turn out? None of them were Michael Jordan. Kobe probably came close. LeBron is sort of a different kind of player, but nobody had the combination, personality, winning, and dominance. It does not happen that often. And I think in track and field, it's even more rare. Look, Jamaica will do well in the men's 100 and 200 to have one finalist in Tokyo. You can quote me on that on this day. So this whole thing of finding the next boat, how about like let's focus on Jamaica finding one person to give any semblance of respectability to that men's sprint core again, because so far you look at the times and it's like Jamaica is not. I don't think the Jamaican men are necessarily going to be a factor in Tokyo. Who's gonna suddenly show up? You're gonna, to me, and this is what we do in Trinidad too. We start looking in the rearview mirror to figure out what's going to be in front of you. They're like, oh well, Blake will figure it out. He might, but how has Blake's medal count look for the last 5 years? When was Johan Blake's last medal? You know when it was? 2012. That's almost 10 years ago. So I am a lot more concerned about other Caribbean countries, even Jamaica, finding the next one to be competitive as opposed to finding the next boat. That is two completely different missions.
Yeah. quite an interesting take from Atto Bolin regarding the finding the next Usain Bolt, and even to the end, his prediction on Jamaica and whether or not, because at one point in time Jamaica dominated the sprint, especially both male and female, and his concern is that whether or not Jamaica will be able to continue that domination, and he is saying if they get one in the final, that will be happy. But and I mean, he says you can quote me on this, so I assume he knows what he is speaking about. That's regarding that. But I want us to also listen to what he had to say regarding sprinting in the Caribbean, because we know, apart from the 400, the Caribbean, when it comes to sprinting, global sprinting, the Caribbean led the way. Whether it was Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, no, I can't say Grenada, but basically, even Barbados had at one time with Obadiah Thompson and others. The Caribbean produced a number of top sprinters over the years, and someone made the point that the cupboard is not bare in sprinting in the Caribbean. Atto Bolden had this to say on the program on Thursday.
Yep.
Paul is saying it's true. The Caribbean cupboard in sprinting is bare. Do you agree?
On the men's side, you look and you go, well, Trinidad and Tobago, forget it. I don't know. Certainly in the 100 meters, there is nobody from the Southern Caribbean that is going to factor in Tokyo. This is what I do for a living. I don't see it happening. I have already said I don't think that Jamaica is going to put anybody into the Olympic final. I'll be happy to be proven wrong, but you tell me who that person is going to be, given what the landscape looks like right now. I wouldn't say the cupboard is bare, because you have the last 3 Olympic champions and Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, who I think in 2019 had maybe her best ever season. So, Elaine Thompson, I mean, it's a shame that she's dealing with this Achilles tendon injury, which she doesn't seem to be able to get under control. But I think you sort of leave out the possibility that somebody sort of bubbling under could also step up. So I wouldn't say the Caribbean cupboard for sprinting is bare. Not on the women's side. On the men's side, it's not quite as good. Obviously, we have Karania, we have a few others, but no, it's not going to be as good as it has been for the last 10 years. I think that's a safer statement.
Right, guys, you heard it there. 2 pieces from him. And he says he doesn't think, that's his view, that he doesn't think, well, especially from the women's side, well, we know Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce and Elaine Thompson. And there is also Shawnee Miller, who who's concentrating on the 200 meters this year. So, you know, it's quite interesting in terms of the women's, but the men's side, there is, while he doesn't think it's beer, there is a concern because, as he indicated, there was once upon a time Trinidad and Tobago, for example, had more sprinters, quality sprinters than even Jamaica. You know, yes, you had the Bolt, you had the Blake, you had Powell, but Trinidad had at least 5 or so quality sprinters, you know. And then he say now that in terms of the Southern Caribbean, he cannot see anyone really factor it in. Rulian?
And he's right. He's most definitely right. I don't see men sprinting in the Caribbean is up to par as it used to be. The female is there, but even the female still is in, could still be in some trouble. Because again, I know a lot of times, you know, Otto did say it, is the mileage, is not age. But age, in my opinion, do have a lot to do with it. Injuries do have a lot to do with it. Sitting some time off do have a lot to do with it. The things that one country may be able to do, the United States is different. And these guys in them, they break rules out there, you know, and they do things to be on top of the world. And we, you know, we follow rules. So, you know, when one is training or can train, some others is training, or meet, some others are going to meet. But I don't see track and field sprint men in the Caribbean is up to par like it used to be over the past few years. I think it's failing. I see other events picking up. Some of the field events is picking up. We have a good long jumper from Jamaica. Then we have our javeler. I see some hurdlers on the female side. But when it comes to the men, I see in the sprint from the 400, from the 200 down. I think we're in trouble. And then all we really have in the 400 right now is Kirani. So we are failing in sprints from the 400 down from men in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. All right. Jason?
No to the next Usain Bolt. Absolutely not. Um, every generation sees an athlete in every sport that transcends the sport, that takes the sport to another level, that takes the sport to a wow. Will Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Julius Irvin, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, no LeBron James. These are different eras. And even though at times their generations might meet at a juncture, it is doing math. It is called the set and the subset. You know, when they meet at that subset level. The same thing in cricket. I mean, we saw Gary Sobers, and folks of that era would tell you, wow, there would be absolutely nothing like Gary Sobers to come again until we saw Viv Richards. And then that was it. The Master Blaster is the ultimate. And then came Brian Lara and Sachin Tendulkar, you know, and whoever thought of a wicketkeeper batsman being a threat after the days of Jeffrey Dujon. But then we saw MS Dhoni, and we saw Adam Gilchrist. So I'm just saying that every sport, um, we heard about George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, and then the world was left in, and we saw Mike Tyson. You know, so every sport, every single sport has that athlete that at some point in this generation would take over, and there will never be another Usain Bolt. We may see somebody even greater than Usain Bolt. We may see somebody with that ultimate combination who may do more. Are we going to see that person now in a hurry? I don't believe so. Usain Bolt has done so much more for track and field than just winning a gold medal or a few gold medals. He has done so much more. He has made every young man in Jamaica and around the Caribbean believe that you don't have to go into a race with your face serious, swell up to prove that you're focused. The reason why Ato believes, and I'm agreeing with him here, that he doesn't see anything on the horizon for Trinidad in terms of sprinting is because, again, the administrators in Trinidad and Tobago didn't nurture what Atto Bolden did. The reason why there were so many folks coming up after Atto Bolden, the Brown, the Thompson, the reason why they all wanted to be the next Atto Bolden. The only thing they didn't do was put on a shades with red trim, lace up, and run like a horse on the track. So the opportunity to take these talent, to spot that talent, to nurture it, and make it into the next was missed by the folks who had the opportunity to do it, the administrators again. They missed that opportunity. And likewise, Jamaica, Jamaica was so happy in making sure that boy, bolt and bolt and bolt and bolt, that who knows, just maybe they missed something somewhere along the line. But I want to tell you, and as Ato said, you can quote me on this. If he stays healthy, I'm not worried about his education because he's very focused there. I'm not worried about his demeanor and his discipline because he's very focused there. But if he stays healthy, remember me telling you this. There's a young man in Grenada named Tygon Peterkin. Don't ever forget that name because Tygon Peterkin is going to be something very special at the sprint level, not just around the Caribbean, but for the world to see. Remember me saying that. So that is where I stand as far as the whole issue around the next Usain Bolt. Um, is the cover? Well, I think that basically covers both of them. In me saying that, yeah, boy, the cupboard, the cupboard NBA, we had to look deep inside the cupboard to get some stuff. The cupboard is full. You just can't reach. You have to bend down to go in the cupboard, kind of thing. You can't just stretch and it's
No,
not right.
and, and you are so clear about that. Sorry for cutting you off there. You are so clear about that because one of the things too that the administration always coming to and they focus on is that one athlete. They constantly focus on that one athlete. Kirani, and let us build our next Kirani. Not necessarily saying Kirani, but let us build our next generation. Kirani is not going to do it forever. Who is following after him? Who is following after Usain Bolt? Like in Jamaica, who is following after him? In the Caribbean, who is following after him? No one. We will have a few female sprinters coming up that will follow those wonderful ladies that's coming up, but we haven't seen it yet, but who is following those guys in them? And that's one of the key things. No one else is following up.
Well, and then there's also the issue regarding even West Indies cricket, for example, because there was when we were winning, when we were dominating, we were not investing and doing what we're supposed to do at the time. We were, in fact, building, others.
That's administration again, because there's a part of administration, Bascom, that speaks about continuity. There's a part that speaks about, where do we? Yes, we are here now, but I mean, it is so difficult, It is so difficult to take 11 guys who are basically spread across a region and different countries having different cultures, a different, even though we speak English, we kind of have some different, little slangs and nuances in between there. And it is so difficult to take these guys and bring them together for what, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and say, okay, guys, let's go together, let's come together. We have a series. We have to travel to England, as opposed to keeping this unit almost constantly. Yes, there's a factor involved, which is money, but winners always attract dollars. Winners always attract dollars, and the opportunity we had to do it when we were attracting the dollars, we missed that again. So just maybe at the next series that the West Indies win, maybe that should be the start of the new beginning.
Mhm.
And I think even going there, sorry, even going to the cricket, there's a lot we don't know in the administration part of it. But I always used to say why the Ambrose and the Walsh and those guys wasn't stay back to groom other young guys coming up. And there's a lot of factor, administration, maybe money, maybe this. There's a lot of different things in between there. But I always ask that question because now they come in, you know, and why we didn't have academies. England had that. India have it. Australia, they all groom their young people for now, for this era now, and we didn't do it. And now we're fighting to pick up the scraps here and there. And when we had it, we are the best cricket in the world. You know, we go back to even Grenada, Hurricane. Hurricane was a dynamite team, and all the other guys. But then who is picking up after them? You see, there is nobody grooming a coach to come up. A coach don't take a young lad and keep him next to him and say, you're going to be the next coach and you're going to groom, see what I'm doing, but add your own into it. Coaches want to be there forever. You know, and when they leave now, we have somebody coming in who never pick up the different styles of something that they could have picked up from. So we have to learn how to groom our people in. That's why I go back in the beginning. We got to get our young generation involved. And I know you said that, Michael, well, maybe they don't want to get involved. We have to know they want to get involved. They're afraid to come out because they feel these people and them been there forever. And I've listened to young people say they don't want to go in because them people who there, they don't want to leave. So it gives them a bad sense of why would I try if I'm never going to get in? Why would I try if I'm never going to get an opportunity? We at administration within the Caribbean, within the OACS, they have to learn how to groom young generation coming up because they're not going to live forever or do the same thing forever. They have to, because now a group will come in and they don't know what they're doing. A lot of people are in position, don't have a clue what they're doing. You know, at one point here in Canada, our athletics director for track and field had never run track in his life. So you're coming in to run track and field as a business fail. And that's what those kind of things. So we have to be able to get those people in who wants to, not jump on the street and grab anyone who wants to, and you have to find out who can I groom, who can we groom in every sport. So in that way we can build and have a great sports organization in Grenada and the Caribbean.
Okay, well, we need to we have time running out, and we still have the broadcasting aspect to get to. Let's say some comments. Bascom, I know you were a soprano in the GBS squad, so there's no way you're leaving the program today without singing happy birthday to Senator Ray Roberts, to Mr. Jason Skeet, or to me. All of we Taurus. So Toro, somehow your birthday is when? Soon, today, when? But let me let you know also that also celebrating a birthday today is Gordon Greenwich, from a legend, a West Indies legend. His birthday is actually today, so happy birthday, Gordon Greenwich. So I assume quite a few in that bracket. Folks, we running out of time, so I really want to get that piece with Arthur Bolden regarding the whole issue of broadcasting, because Arthur is, in terms of track and field, is basically carrying the Caribbean on his shoulders, as I said, regarding track and field, global track and field, as a broadcaster and analyst. And then in football, as a pundit, as he will say, you have that of Shaka Hislop, for example, on ESPN. And then in cricket, you have quite a few, albeit most of them from Trinidad and Tobago. You have the Ian Bishop, you have the Ganga, you have Bishu, you have quite a few of them. You even had Fazil Mohammed, who is more or less concentrating more on his his presentation, his anchoring and thing these days. And then of recent, you have Courtney Ambrose, and you have Courtney Walsh in terms of local comments and thing, in doing regional comments and thing like that. So, but the whole issue of sports broadcasting, I put that to Arthur Bolden on Thursday, because I know it's something we spoke about on this program before, and why it is there is the urge young people to get into sports broadcasting. And I think, Jason, we spoke about that already, and what we probably plan to do and all these sort of things. I wish we had a lot of time to talk more about that, but I want to put in the part with Arthur Bolden and what he has to say, and then we'll come back, because I think there are some comments as well on the message board regarding that. The issue has to do with broadcasting, and Trinidad and Tobago, with all respect, they have produced some of our top sports broadcasters, whether it's track and field, whether it's cricket, whether it's football. We have Shaka Hislop, for example. We have yourself carrying the weight of the Caribbean, mainly in track and field. And then in cricket, we have the Ian Bishop and Fazil Mohammed. I mean, it's a host of those guys. Yeah. What advice, and I don't know if it's something special in the water in Trinidad and Tobago, but what advice would you give to those Caribbean young men and women who may have an interest in sports broadcasting? It doesn't have to be just track and field. And even to those who are involved in sports themselves, like yourself, who, was involved in football to an extent, and then track and field. What advice would you give them in terms of having a career probably in broadcasting?
Fazir Mohammed and Shaka Hislop are friends of mine. Shaka I've known since high school days. He went to my rival high school. I think you would be honest if you said that the two of them have a great command of the English language. I like to point out that Shaka is more pundit than broadcast. It's not the same job within the sport. In other words, I have to call live events as they happen. Shaka is more of a studio pundit, which also takes great chops. I think that having command of the English language is certainly one thing, but the other thing is you have to not only have a passion for the event that you cover, you have to know it intricately and intimately. If I walked into an audition for NBC, you could pick anybody in track and field, and I could go on for several minutes about who this person is, what their skills are, what maybe their deficiencies are. I know my sport because I loved it even before I participated in it. And I think I see a lot. I mean, obviously, I have a lot of people in my direct messages saying, "Hey, get me a job here, get me a job there." And just on the off chance, I'll ask them a question. So tell me what you can about so and so. They can't answer me. I'm like, you're not gonna get past the first audition. You're not gonna get past the first look, because you have to have the ability. You have to have an intricate knowledge of what you are covering. Shaka Hislop knows football the way he knows the back of his hand. Fazir Mohammed loves cricket in a way that I don't think anybody else in Trinidad does. So people think that, well, I look good and I'd look good on TV. And it's like, yeah, so what? There'll be 100 other people that can do that. What else can you bring to the table? Can you bring knowledge that the average person typing something on Facebook does not have? Because that's the kind of things that's going to separate you from everybody else.
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense, very much so. Let me quickly, Rudion, just briefly, if you can give them, because I want to get some comments there.
Yeah. Most definitely. You have to know the sport and know athletes. Very, very, it's a key thing. And you have to be able to, it's just not, I know the sport. You got to be able to know the English language, as I said. You got to be able to learn how to speak about certain things. Right away, you got to be able to give the answers and answer a question or make a comment about something that nobody don't know about, and you have to is knowledge. So he's absolutely right. You have to know the knowledge. It's not about looking good. It's about knowing the sport itself, like living, breathing, eating the sport itself, so that we can move forward. And any young athletes out there, or any young person out there who want to get involved, you have to know the sport. You got to love the sport, know the sport, study the sport. But beyond that, too, your English language have to be up to par.
Mm-hmm. Jason, but Clev is saying, Deputy is saying, Atto's comment on broadcasting was a lesson script, or should I say deficiency that many of our present broadcasters are sadly lacking. Command of the English language, familiarity of or with the subject matter at hand in order to come across with a sense of coherency, consistency, and clarity. Hope many did listen to what he had to say concerning that drag. And yes, sadly lacking. And as he says, structure. Yeah. Jason?
Bascom, this issue is so dear to me. I am fearful that I might even shed a tear right here. I have spent more than half my life I've spent in the media. I started radio at the age of 15, and I give praises to Paul Roberts every single day for it. I thank God for him. I thank God for everything that he has done in grooming me and everything I learned along the way. And one of the things that I learned very early in the game, which I hold very dear to me up until today, is to keep going, to keep getting better, and in the process, to never compromise my professional standards. And I can't say that that is the norm. It should be, but I can't say that that is the norm, not today. And I'll tell you why I say that. Let me just bring something back to your remembrance, Bascom. We worked together in media for a lot of years. And I remember there was a year when I went to the then manager of the Grenada Broadcasting Network, Rural Edwards, and I said to him, just give me the intercall to produce this year. Give me the staff, give me the. He said, Jason, I trust you, go ahead. And that year, if I may say so, and Bascom, you could attest to that, we had probably the absolute best intercall coverage that Grenada has ever had. We went out there, first of all, not dressed in the usual stretch up jersey or stretch up polo and button pose. We were out there on the middle of the field doing an open ceremony in blazers and getting things ready. We wanted everything to be spot on even before the microphone opened. Um, got a lot of licks for it from people who I worked with along that day. But at the end of the day, everybody came to us and said, boy, I mean, thanks. This was it. This was the best. I mean, we went down to the venue days before, checking out camera angles, making sure that everything was in place. We wanted a camera. I remember specifically saying, I want a camera on the finish line. Go right across the tape. I want a camera right there. And I fought tooth and nail for it. And the organizers of the intercall said, no, they don't want anything there disturbing the. You know, 2 races were decided by that camera. 2 races were decided by that camera. They came to our broadcast booth and asked Mike Alexis to replay it in slow motion so that they can determine the winner. It happened on 2 occasions that very said year. And I'm saying all of this to say that we brought up Anil Roberts. A lot of people may not know. Anil, first of all, has a law degree, and he's a qualified athletic physiotherapist and all of that. Guy knows athletics. And we brought up Anil. I got his trip sponsored, his accommodation, everything sponsored. And we had such an awesome team. Bascom, you were out on the field dealing with the field events. We had a roving camera there. Our presentation that year was so awesome. And we did it for free. You know, the following year, I said to the then manager, Edwards wasn't the manager at that point. He had left. I said to the then manager, listen, everything I did last year was done for free. This year, I need to be paid. And I was never called after that up until this day. And we're speaking about more than 10 years ago. Up to recently, I had a situation where I had to walk out of a broadcast booth because the standard was just not what I was comfortable with. And I'm prepared to not being called if it means I'm holding on to my standards. And I'm just saying that to endorse the point that Arthur is making and to what Rudion said. We have so much folks here who are ready and willing to want to learn, but the opportunity to do that is not equally available unless you are prepared to compromise. Compromise for political, because of political connections, compromise because of who you know and who knows you, And very little has to do with your ability and your talent and the mere fact that you will stand up and stand to what you were taught. I look at radio and television and broadcasters now, and I'm asking myself, I sometimes I question myself, why did I spend all my time and money learning this trade when it's so easy now to just walk into a studio based on who you know, irrespective of how foolish you sound, and get a job? Did I do something wrong somewhere along the line? And then I reminded myself, no, you need to hold fast. But I'm just saying this to say that, yes, our broadcast pool is at its lowest. And even in cricket, a lot of it still has to do with who you know and who knows you. I listen to a lot of cricket commentary from even some of my fellow Caribbean cricketers, and they're horrible. They're poor, they're terrible. And I make no apologies for saying it. Because you played cricket means you speak cricket. Not because you ran athletics means that there must be a decent combination of everything involved. And
Mhm.
yeah, I hold it dear to me. I could talk on this for the next hour, so stop me when you're ready.
Okay. Well, I do promise that, and I keep promising that we need to have a program specifically on the whole issue of sports broadcasting, sports journalism, sports journalists, you know, sports media as a whole. But just not getting around it. But I'm hoping that we could do it sometime in the future. So some comments there before we wrap up. So true from Tracy Crawford. So true. Mentorship, grooming is important. Golden Child is saying it's more than just a command of the English language, but a command of the language of the sport you are covering. Clever saying that politics polarize, sports and culture polarize, the pulpit polarize, participation / involvement of our best pathetic. And then we have some bantering going on between Ray Roberts and Lincoln Depredine. Toro, Jason will need a year of grooming. He says, Toro, your birthday is later this month, and that has to be a huge one. I suggest you stage it on PT Martinique under COVID protocols. Don't forget to invite me, Clev, and show I am on the list. And Toro is wrapping up by saying, nah, Ray, my birthday just passed. We who came through the media from the late 1970s to the 1900s were lucky to have experienced professional people to supervise us. I was 20 when I was made sub-editor, but I had people to guide me at the workplace and outside, including the late Sir Alistair Hughes. Guys, I want to thank you very much for being part of our program. Don't forget on Thursday, on Thursday, we should have the NACAC president, Mr. Mike Sands, out of the Bahamas, joining us. And then on Saturday, next Saturday, God's willing, the great Sir Curtly Ambrose will be on our program. We'll hear from Sir Curtly all about those past days, that special test, I think it was in Australia, with Junior Murray at the stumps. And when he bowled out, that literally bowled out the team. So Curtly will be with us hopefully next Saturday. We'll confirm during the week, but he has already partially confirmed, I should say, that he will be on the program on Saturday, God's willing. And then we'll hear from the NACAC president on Thursday, because we will hear, by then we should know whether or not there will be Curfew games this year. They expect to make a decision in the next few days regarding the Curfew games in Bermuda. So much has been happening, and again, sports is taking another hit. It was scheduled for, as you know, Bermuda is insisting that they want to host it, but all because of all that's happening with the protocols, the COVID protocols, and countries opening and reopening and closing and what have you, as we understood that Trinidad is back under lockdown again. And therefore, it's really tough, and sports is really taking a beating. Thank you once again, folks. That's me. One who's afraid of water should not seek to be captain of the ship. Anderson, and great job, Mike. Thank you again, Jason Skeet, live from St. George's, Grenada, and Rudian Silva in Toronto, Canada. I want to thank you very much for being part of our program. hope to be with us. I hope for you to be with us on the program again. We'll do it all over again, probably 1 month's time, as it is. Is every month we try to have an open discussion. The invitation is yours to be with me. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us, man. Have a good day.
Okay.
Always a
Thank you.
pleasure, Mikey.
All right then. So that's, yes, you heard it there from Jason and from Rudian, joining us and being part of our program this afternoon. And just to remind you once again that we continue with our program on Thursday with Mike Sands, Mr. Mike Sands, the president of NACAC, North American, Central American, and Caribbean Athletic Association. He will be with us to give us an update in terms of the character games and other related information regarding track and field in the NACAC region. And NACAC means not just Caribbean, North America, Caribbean, and Central America. And then on Saturday, we have the big boy, Sir Curtly Ambrose. Yes, he will be joining. He joining the likes of previously Courtney Walsh, and then we have some others, but we do not want to have so many of them back to back, so we try to space them out. But Sir Curtly will be with us on Saturday. Thank you very much for being with us, and I want to wish you, for those in the Caribbean in particular, happy May Day. Be safe. And as our good friend Ray Roberts is saying, his happy birthday, and he's also saying solidarity forever. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant weekend.